Here's the recap. The story begins with the man moving through the forest at night, haunted by memories of his past. He eventually returns to his van, seeking solace in its familiar surroundings. Meanwhile, Sophie, who has recently moved to the city to pursue her writing career, finds herself stranded in the forest after her car breaks down. As Sophie tries to find help, she encounters a menacing man who offers assistance, but soon reveals his true intentions by attacking her. She manages to escape and stumbles upon the solitary man's van, seeking refuge. The man initially refuses to help her, but the situation escalates when the attacker arrives, leading to a tense confrontation. The solitary man eventually takes Sophie into his van, but instead of helping her, he kidnaps her. Sophie is bound and gagged, and the man drives off, leaving her in a state of fear and uncertainty. The story ends with Sophie still trapped in the van, contemplating her dire situation and hoping for a chance to escape. And now our story continues. The van turned off the main road and onto a narrow, bumpy path. The tyres crunched over gravel and dirt, and the van jolted with each pothole and uneven patch. After what seemed like an eternity, the van stopped. Despite her restraints, she looked out the window. They were in a field encircled by tall, shadowy trees. Moonlight filtered through, casting eerie patterns on the ground. The man turned off the engine, and for a moment there was complete silence. They were alone in the field, the trees standing like silent sentinels around them. It was a perfect spot, hidden away. Sophie lay quietly in the back of the van, listening. She heard the door open and the soft thud of his boots hitting the ground. She strained her ears, trying to make out what he was doing. There was a brief pause, followed by the sound of him climbing onto the roof. The van creaked slightly under his weight, and she could hear him moving around up there, his footsteps steady and deliberate. After a few minutes, the noises ceased, and she heard him climb down. The door opened and closed again, and the van shifted slightly as he got back in. Kneeling, he reaches into a small metal case stored under one of the seats in the van. The case was well worn, with scratches and dents that hinted at frequent use. He opened it with a practiced motion, revealing an assortment of medical supplies meticulously organised inside. Among them was a syringe, which he carefully selected and prepared for use. As he advances toward her, Sophie sees the needle. A fresh surge of panic overtook her. She thrashed against her restraints, her eyes wide. "No, please!" she screamed, her voice muffled by the bandana around her mouth. His grip tightened around her arm as he tried to steady it. "Be still," he commanded. She watched in horror as he wrapped a tourniquet around her arm, tightening it to make her veins more visible. The sensation of the needle piercing her skin made her shiver, and she felt a wave of nausea wash over her. An intense sense of impending doom surged within her. He was draining her blood into a small clear bag. The sight of it in his hands was nauseating. Her mind raced with thoughts of what he might do next, and she struggled to hold back tears. With a trembling voice, she finally spoke up. "Please don't hurt me." Her plea hung in the air, a desperate attempt to appeal to any shred of humanity he might have. Sophie observed him attentively as he carefully managed the bag containing blood. He moved with efficiency, showing no signs of hesitation or remorse. He opened a portable fridge in the van's corner. It hummed softly as he placed the bag of blood inside, carefully arranging it among other items. Sophie felt a deep sense of unease as she watched him. The presence of the fridge and the way he managed the blood only added to the mystery and fear surrounding her situation. The man reached into a small cabinet in the van. After a moment, he found a loaf of bread and a jar of peanut butter. Before handing them to her, he moved closer and began to untie the ropes that bound her wrists and removed the bandana tied around her mouth. Once her hands were free, he handed her the loaf of bread and the jar of peanut butter. She took them reluctantly, her hands trembling. The rich, nutty aroma of peanut butter filled the air as she opened the jar, but it did little to comfort her. With a trembling voice, she finally spoke up. "Why are you doing this? What do you want from me?" Her questions hung in the air. Sophie hesitated for a moment, weighing her options. "My name is Sophie. Please, I just want to understand why you're doing this." Her words filled with uncertainty, and she watched him closely, hoping for any sign of empathy or understanding. The van's interior remained tense and silent as she waited for his response. He glanced at her briefly, his expression cold and indifferent. "It doesn't matter why," he said curtly. "Just eat your food and stay quiet." His tone was harsh. Sophie felt a surge of defiance welling up inside her. Drawing a deep breath, she focused on the thought that she deserved answers. The kidnapping, the silence, the violation of having her blood taken without explanation fueled her determination. Summoning every ounce of courage, she finally spoke up, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. "Why did you take my blood? What are you planning to do with it?" she asked, her eyes fixed on him, hoping to pierce through his cold exterior. He glanced at her with a look of disdain. "You don't need to know," he said curtly. "Just eat your food and keep quiet." His tone was harsh and dismissive, making it clear that he had no intention of explaining himself. After this brief exchange, he considered his options. He glanced at her, then at the ropes he had used to tie her up earlier. He left her untied, confident the locked van would prevent her from escaping. Sophie watched him warily, her mind racing with thoughts of what to do next. Though free from her bonds, the locked van still felt like a prison. She knew she had to stay alert and look for any opportunity to escape, even as the tension in the van remained heavy. He looked at her one last time before turning away. "Don't get any ideas," he said curtly. "You're not going anywhere." Thanks for watching. If you liked this episode, please like and subscribe.